Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, now I'll say the verse, and if you can repeat after me, and then you all can recite the shloka as well. So here we start. Tatrapi hamsam purusham paramatmanam atmadrik yajam stallokatamapa kushalena samadhina. Would one of you like to say the shloka? Tatrapi hamsam purusham paramatmanam atmadrik yajamstal lokatam apa kushalena samadhina. One more. Tatrapi hamsam purusham paramatmanam atmadrik yajamstal lokatamapa kushalena samadhina. Tatrapi hamsam purusham paramatmanam atmadrik yajamstal lokanam apa kushalena samadhina. Okay, now the translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Okay, the translation. Although Mahārāja Antardhāna was engaged in performing sacrifices, because he was a self-realized soul, he very intelligently rendered devotional service to the Lord, who eradicates all the fears of his devotees. By thus worshipping the Supreme Lord, Mahārāja Antardhāna, rapt in ecstasy, attained his planet very easily. The purport. Since sacrifices are generally performed by fruitive actors, it is especially mentioned here, Tatrapi, that although Mahārāja Antardhāna was externally engaged in performing sacrifices, his real business was rendering devotional service by hearing and chanting. In other words, he was performing the usual sacrifices by the method of Sankirtan Yajna, as recommended herein. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Shakyam Atmanivedanam. Devotional service is called Kirtan Yajna, and by practicing the Sankirtan Yajna, one is very easily elevated to the planet where the Supreme Lord resides. Out of the 5 kinds of liberation, achieving the same planet where the Lord resides and living with the Lord there is called Salokya liberation. One thing that we skipped is reading out the Sanskrit to the English of every word, the translation, so we can do it now. Tatra api, despite his engagement, hamsam, one who kills the distress of his kinsman, purusham, unto the Supreme Person, parama atmanam, the most beloved Supersoul, atmadrik, one who has seen or acquired self-realization, yajan, by worshipping, tat lokatam, achieving the same planet, apa, achieved, kushalena, very easily, samadhina, always keeping himself in ecstasy. Okay, so again I'll read the translation and then I'll ask you, there'll be a little bit of a quiz, so please pay attention. Although Mahārāja Antardhāna was engaged in performing sacrifices, because he was a self-realized soul, he very intelligently rendered devotional service to the Lord, who eradicates all the fears of his devotees. By thus worshipping the Supreme Lord, Mahārāja Antardhāna, rapt in ecstasy, attained his planet very easily. Okay, quiz question number 1. Who is Maharaj? Who is the king that we are talking about? What's his name? He came twice. What's the name of the king? What's his name again? Okay, Mahārāja Antardhāna. Does anyone know who Mahārāja Antardhāna is in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Okay, I'll give you one clue. It's a difficult clue still. His Mahārāja Antardhāna is the name given to him by Indra. Everyone knows who Indra is, right? The chief devata, the king of all the devatas. And his real name is Vijitasva. Okay. Now, does anyone know who King Vijitasva is? I said it's a difficult clue. No. Okay. He is the son of this personality who is practically the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the son of Prithu Maharaj. Who was a Purusha avatar. King Prithu Maharaj came. Everyone here, has anyone heard of Prithu Maharaj? Whoever has heard, please raise their hands. Okay, so for those who have not, King Prithu Maharaj was like I said, a Purusha avatar, a practical incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he appeared on this earth, he was the ruler of the whole earth in the Satyuga, and the earth started producing food grains in abundance. He was an extremely, extremely pure devotee of the Lord. And perfect in all the 9 types of devotional service. Now when I read the purport, there was the 9 types of devotional service mentioned. Anyone list down the 9 types of devotional service one by one? Very good. So King Prithu Maharaj was expert in all this, and Prithu Maharaj performed the Ashwamedha Yagya. Everyone knows the Ashwamedha Yagya. Bhagavatam class devotees know the Ashwamedha Yagya. And he performed 99 such Ashwamedha Yagyas. When he was performing the 100th sacrifice, Indra was very insecure and worried that he might lose his position as the king of the Devatas, because one who has performed 100 Ashwamedha Yagyas automatically can get, if they desire, the position of Indra. Indra is a position. There is a person behind the position, and an extremely pious personality attains that position. So that personality who was in the seat of Indra, what he did was he came and stole the horse of Prithu Maharaj. And he was invisible, but the son of Prithu Maharaj, Vijitasva, could recognize him. And because he could recognize him, later on in the pastime, it's a very famous pastime in which the demigods intervene. In the end, King Prithu Maharaj, out of respect for Indra, he stops his Ashwamedha Yagya at 99. He doesn't go and hit the century. He doesn't go for the 100th Ashwamedha Yagya. So, and he stops there. But his son Vijitasva, his oldest son, because he could see Indra when the Devatas come. Generally it is said that the Devatas appear where, the glorification of Sri Krishna, the glorification of Sri Vishnu is happening. The Devatas appear, but we as human beings cannot see them. And because Vijitasva, though, the son of Maharaj, or Prithu Maharaj, could actually see Indra taking the horse, although Indra was invisible to everyone else. And because he could see him, but he still did not do anything out of respect for the personality of Indra. And because of that respect shown by Vijitasva, Indradev gives Vijitasva this name called Antardhāna, one who can see that which is invisible. So that is how the king gets his name, Mahārāja Antardhāna. And just like his father, he was a very self-realized soul. He divided the earth in different directions and passed it amongst his brothers and his sons. And he was rendering devotional service to the Lord. Now, and it is said in this verse, by thus worshipping the Supreme Lord, Mahārāja Antardhāna, rapt in ecstasy, attained his planet very easily. So, another quiz question, because it's a play of English also. The last sentence, it's here also on the board. It said, by thus worshipping the Supreme Lord, Mahārāja Antardhāna, rapt in ecstasy, attained his planet very easily. What is his planet refer to? Who is he? His. Who is the his here? Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Yeah, Narayana, Krishna. They're the same person. And then also in the purport it is said that out of the 5 kinds of liberation, so it is to be implied, King Antardhāna achieved Narayan or Krishna's planet, so he achieved liberation. So then in the purport it is said, out of the 5 kinds of liberations, achieving the same planet where the Lord resides and living with the Lord, there is called Salokya liberation. So King Antardhāna achieved Salokya liberation. So here another quick quiz question. Here it is said, out of the 5 kinds of liberation, he achieved Salokya, which is living in the same planet as the Lord. So if it is said that there is 5 kinds of liberation and 1 is listed here, that means there must be another 4 also, right? So what are the other 4 kinds of liberation? What does Sarupya mean? Achieving the same bodily features, the 4-armed Narayan form. Okay, Sarupya, 1 ticked. And the other 3? Samipya. Yeah, what is? Sorry, what is? Yep, being a very close associate of the Lord, living very near to the Lord. So Samipya, Sarupya and Salokya, which 2 remaining? Sashti. What does Sashti mean? It is something everyone desires for. And every Hindu celebrating Diwali, most of them, they send you you'll be flooded with WhatsApp messages with Lakshmi Devi, Because what does Lakshmi Devi give you? Yes, Sashti means having the same opulence as the Lord. And then the last one, the 5th one. Sahijya. Okay, Sahijya. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, merging into the supreme effulgence of the Lord. So these are the 5 kinds of liberation. And Mahārāja Antardhāna, who's King Vijitasva, the son of Prithu Maharaj, who got the name Antardhāna from Indradev, he achieves the Salokya liberation. And then Srila Prabhupada writes that devotional service is called Kirtan Yajna, and by practicing Sankirtan Yajna, one is very easily elevated to the planet where the Supreme Lord resides. And we said Kushalena, very easily. So, okay, so that's, and just by performing Sankirtan Yajna, very easily one resides. One very easily attains this kind of liberation. So if it is so easy, everybody, one will wonder, why doesn't everyone take it up? Everybody should take it up, right? But why doesn't everyone take it up? Quick question. Is it so hard? Yeah, we have attachment and desire. I mean, in a way, Krishna now, everything in Krishna consciousness it says simultaneously one and different. It is there and it is not there. So then in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in chapter 7, verse 28, right? It's a very famous verse. Yeshantva antagatam papa jananam punya karmanam te dvandvam moha nirmuktam bhajante mam dridhavrataha. So persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated are freed from the dualities of delusion and they engage in my service with determination. And if you engage in Krishna's service, kushalena, very easily you achieve him. But then there is a condition put here by Krishna, that persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated. Now, most of us here, although I'm in the Srimad Bhagavatam class with August Assembly of Devotees, most of us do not know what we have done in our previous lives, right? So we don't know whether we acted piously or what we did. And in this life, we know, but sometimes we don't want to say what we did. We may have acted piously at times, we may not have acted piously at times, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated. So there are three such predicaments that Krishna is putting. You've acted piously in previous life, you've acted piously in this life, and all the sinful reactions are completely eradicated. When that happens, that's when you engage in Krishna's service with determination, and that's when very kushalena, very easily, you achieve him. So then that is why perhaps it is very difficult, right, to get to Krishna consciousness. But then Prabhupada is saying that by performing Sankirtan Yagya, one can very easily achieve Krishna consciousness. One can very easily achieve Krishna. So this was a question put to Prabhupada himself by his disciples, particularly Kirtananda Maharaj. When Prabhupada had newly established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in New York, Kirtananda Maharaj, Prabhupada started getting a big following. There was a whole following of mostly hippies. And the hippies in those days, as most of you are aware, they were the counterculture movement. They were people who were fed up with mainstream society. Most of them came actually from very affluent families as well. And they were experimenting in different kind of things. So the word uses, they were experimenting in psychedelic drugs. So they were injecting themselves with different kind of drugs to achieve a higher consciousness because they were fed up with the mainstream society. Back in that time in the US was engaged in a proxy war in Vietnam and was mandatorily drafting youth, able-bodied men to go and serve in Vietnam as well. And when the public of the US were seeing their citizens being killed in a war happening thousands of kilometers away from America, they were quite disenchanted with the whole thing. Particularly the youth of that age. They had these golden rules. One of the golden rule was never trust anyone over 30. But here there was Prabhupada, in his 70s, and they were all, very, very attracted towards him. And they were all people who were experimenting in psychedelic drugs, in all kinds of intoxication, eating anything and everything, being very promiscuous. So, just going back to chapter 7, verse 28, Yeshantva antagatam papam. So, Kirtananda Maharaj asked Prabhupada, there is this verse where Krishna is saying, you've acted piously in previous life and in this life. I don't know about the previous life, but even in this life, we are still not acting piously. Even now, we have come to the platform of Krishna consciousness, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated. Like all these people who are coming, where are their sinful actions completely eradicated? So where have we acted piously that we have, come to your lotus feet, and this verse applies to us, that we are engaged in Krishna's service with determination. So where has the piety come from? And then Prabhupada's answer to that question was, I have created your piety. So this is the association by the association of a pure devotee. The pure devotee can eradicate all obstacles in your path and fix you in determination to the lotus feet of the Lord, because of which very kushalena or very easily you can achieve Krishna. So this was Srila Prabhupada's answer. Of course, all of you are sitting in this Bhagavatam class and you're listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam, so you must have acted piously in your previous lives, otherwise you wouldn't be here, and you're definitely acting more than just piously. You're acting on the platform of pure devotional service, which is beyond piety, beyond sin, because ultimately both of them bind people to this planet. So that's that. What happens in this world, if you perform devotional service, if you do not perform devotional service, then what happens? It's not compulsory, right? It's not mandatory that one has to perform devotional service. So why should someone take up devotional service? And what qualifications does one need to take up devotional service? Is there any particular like in this world, we spoke about Shashti, having the same opulence of Krishna. And then one of actually the very definition of the word Bhagwan means God. It means one who is full in all the 6 opulences. Can anyone list down what are the 6 opulences? Okay, wealth, definitely. Beauty, yes. Strength. Fame. Knowledge and renunciation. So, if you look at anyone who is pretty well endowed in just one of these opulences in this world, is considered very attractive, right? If someone is very, very wealthy, regardless of how they are, what they do, whether they're the President of the United States or whoever they are, they are regarded very, very, they become a very attractive personality, regardless of who they are, just because of if they have a lot of wealth. Jeff Bezos, the richest person in the world today, the founder and owner of Amazon, extremely wealthy. Everybody flocks towards him. The same case with Elon Musk or anyone you can think of. Then fame. Anyone who's very famous, and these days, we're living in an age where if you're on social media, there is this term, right? You wouldn't have heard of it 10, 15 years ago. Influencer. Yeah, everyone heard of the term influencer. And how good an influencer is decided by how many followers they have. So the more millions and millions of followers you have, or hundreds, you start with a few thousands. Okay, you're a small shot in influencer. Then you've got a few 100,000, you're a medium level influencer. If you've got over 1 million followers, well, then people pay you to put a post on Twitter, or X as it's called. People pay you to put a post on Instagram. If you put if you put out a YouTube video that has got 1 million views, then Google pays you for the advertising that goes on in the middle of your video. So that's how the influencers make their money. They get paid by different brands. I know a small-time influencer who at last count had 40,000 followers, and she gets paid. She puts all these, she writes food blogs. She gets paid by Thomas and Cook to come to different parts of the world to write reviews of different restaurants. The restaurants pay her, and different agencies pay her, and that's how she makes her money. She's a full-time influencer. So this is what influence. Anyone has little bit of fame in this world, and people are drawn to them, right? Coming back to the Bhagavatam class. Then if anyone is beautiful, people are drawn to them. Yes. What else? If anyone displays renunciation of any kind, then people are drawn to them as well. That is why there are so many gurus out there who display, if they display renunciation. In fact, many of the influencers preach as well, particularly influencers to young men. There is this whole movement going on about, it's a controversial movement, it's called MG Tao, men going their own way. You go your own way, you should look after your needs first in life. In fact, you should be very stoic. You should not react to anything that anyone tells you to do. You should be, in a way they preach elements of the Bhagavad Gita where you should be the same regardless of what happens to you in your life. Whether you have a job, you don't have a job, whether you're afflicted by happiness or sadness, you should be the same. So people, anyone who shows, and if you do so, then people will be attracted to you. So anyone who displays a little bit of renunciation also, people are attracted. And same with the other opulences as well. Anyone who has a glimpse of this, someone who is very, very strong physically or mentally in this world, also attracts a lot of following. Yeah, the world's strongest man, the world's strongest woman, you've got all these different competitions, you've got different mixed martial arts competitions these days, which also attract a lot of following. Like the paychecks of some of these people are just incredible. For example, even if you're not an international star, if you just play in the local AFL league, and for some of the players, if you get transferred from the Parramatta Eels to the Sydney Swans, right? Some of the transfers involve millions of dollars for these players. I'm not talking about mainstream international players who are and you have to be very physically strong to be playing footy. We're in Australia, so I'm giving that example. So any of these opulences, if you have, one is regarded very, very attractive. But then, coming back to the main point, the question, to take up Sankirtan Yagya, what kind of opulence should you have? What kind of qualification do you need to take up Sankirtan Yagya? Yeah, desire? Yep. Okay, do you need to be very rich to take up devotional service? Do you need to be very beautiful to take up devotional service? Do you need to be very famous to take up devotional service? Do you need to be very, very strong to take up devotional service? Or do you need to be a renunciate to take up devotional service? So you don't need, actually, do you need to have knowledge on everything in this world to take up devotional, or do you need to be a PhD to take up devotional service? You don't need any of the things. In Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, in chapter 8, he has this verse. It's a verse which should give everyone a lot of hope. In that verse, Srila Rupa Goswami says that what was the piety of Dharma the hunter? Then he says, what was the maturity of Dhruva Maharaj? Then he says, what was the knowledge of Gajendra the elephant? Then he says, what was the beauty of Kubja, who appears in Krishna Leela? Then he says, what was the nobility of Vidura's birth? Because Vidura was actually, Dharmaraj, Yamraj was born in a Shudra family. And he says then, what was the chivalrous behavior shown by Akrura? He says, what was the chivalrous behavior shown by Akrura? That all of them have achieved pure devotional service. Indeed, Lord Madhava is not attracted by one's material qualifications, but is attracted by one who takes shelter of his lotus feet. That's all. And one can take the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet also in so many different ways. You all listed the 9 kinds of devotional service. Here we are in the month of Kartik, right? Here there is special blessing that one does a little bit of devotional service, Krishna is attracted. What do you mean by little bit of devotional service? Even if the devotee, it is said that, it's, for example, the Rath Yatra. We had the Rath Yatra in Parramatta last month, right? One who's actually pulling the cart of Lord Jagannath, one who is helping organize the festival of Lord Jagannath, one who is just seeing the chariot of Lord Jagannath, and one who is even commenting on whether favorably or unfavorably on the Rath Yatra festival, does not have to take birth in this world again. In fact, the Leelas of the holy dhams, in Jagannath Puri it is said that ordinarily if you are sleeping here, perhaps unless you're registered for Centrelink, you'll have money coming in the house, but generally you'll be unemployed, right? If you're just sleeping the whole day, you'll be you won't have, I don't think you'll have too many kinds of opulences that you will attract. But in dhams like Jagannath Puri and Mayapur, by sleeping one attains the same results as performing an Ashwamedh Yagya. By talking about even mundane topics, so you could be reading the newspaper or like me checking the cricket score or talking on any topic of this world about the influences as well, you get the same benefit as reciting the Yajurveda. By walking in Jagannath Puri, one gets the same benefit as that attained by one circumambulating the whole earth. So, and here you are in the month of Kartik, where all of these benefits one gets by living in the holy dham, you can get in Sydney by performing a little bit of devotional service. Krishna says that himself. So what is there not to be gained? Conversely, you can have all the wealth in the world, but if you do not perform devotional service, then there's 2 problems. One is, because there are many rich people. In fact, there's a very famous saying, right? Okay, the world is miserable, but it is better to be rich and miserable than to be poor and miserable. We have a counter example to that also in Krishna consciousness, but if we just take this mainstream example, right, it is better to be rich and miserable than to be poor and miserable. How many of you agree with it? No? Better to be rich and miserable, right, than to be poor and miserable. So, but then there are examples, like there are literal examples where, for example, in days gone by, there was this Islamic invader. He originally came from Persia, Mahmud Ghazni. He is infamous for having looted the temple of Somnath 17 times. And when Mahmud Ghazni was on his deathbed, there were tears coming from his eyes. And his near and dear ones went and asked him, what happened? Why are you crying? You're such a great hero. Saying, I'm crying because all this wealth that I have, I cannot take it with me. The Hakim has told me that, the Hakim is the Urdu word for the physician, for the Islamic king. He's saying, the Hakim is informing that I can die anytime soon, but I can't, all this wealth that I have looted, and the Somnath temple was extremely, extremely opulent. Like it was made of pure gold. They were all gem-crusted walls in the Somnath temple. Somnath is the temple of Lord Shiva in Gujarat. It's actually very close to Dwarka if you go to Dwarka. And Mahmud Ghazni said, I've got so much opulence, but I can't take it with me. And then there was another king, Aurangzeb, who's famous for many of his many atrocities that he did during his time, both to his near and, he lived by this principle, very simple one-word principle. In Urdu, it was called Ya Takht Ya Tabut. Takht means the throne, and Tabut means the coffin. Either I'll be sitting on the coffin or I'll be sitting on the throne, nothing in between. And to achieve his end, he imprisoned his father, killed his brothers, became the king, and then he was very infamous for a lot of cruelty that he rendered on various people, particularly those who did not see eye to eye with his faith or him. But Aurangzeb, and there are different skirmishes that Aurangzeb has with the devotees as well. In fact, the Bhagavatam class is a happy occasion, so I'll just skirt through them. But Aurangzeb is also known for having looted and raided and destroyed many temples, all over India, but particularly in Vrindavan. How many of you have gone to Vrindavan? Most of you. So in Vrindavan, have you been to the temple of Radha Govinda Devji? It's a temple that still has, it's 3-floor temple. When it was originally built, it had 7 floors made of pure red sandstone. It was actually built by Srila Jiva Goswami, by Srila Rupa Goswami with assistance from Man Singh, the general of King Akbar, and with 1 year's treasury from Akbar's kingdom. So King Akbar was the grandson of Aurangzeb, great grandson of Aurangzeb, and he built the temple. And Aurangzeb one day, there used to be this tradition in the temple of Radha Govinda Devji, which they had borrowed from Jagannath Puri, because Vakreshwar Pandit, who was a confidential associate of Lord Chaitanya sent him to Vrindavan to assist Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami in building that temple. And they imbibed some of the traditions they have in Jagannath Puri. In Jagannath Puri, on every Ekadashi, they light different lamps. They cover the whole temple with ghee lamps. And they were observing the same tradition in Radha Govinda Devji. And when Akbar was in Agra, which is not very far from Vrindavan, and sitting in his kingdom, from his balcony, he could see this big flash of light. And he asked his servants, where is that light coming from? And they said that today is the Ekadashi, a holy day for the Hindus and the Vaishnavas in Vrindavan. And the temple that your great-grandfather built, they've put all these ghee lamps. So he was so angry just by hearing that he ordered, by tomorrow I want that whole temple razed to the ground. Aurangzeb said that. And then there was one Rajput soldier in his army who took great risk and rushed in the middle of the night. The chronicles of the Vrindavan Research Center reveal we don't know the name of the person. His horse was called Pavan, which means wind. And he went in the middle of the night and he informed the Mahants of Vrindavan. Shivram Goswami was the name of the chief Mahant. He rang the big bell and got all the priests of Vrindavan together. And he said, Aurangzeb is sending his soldiers tomorrow to raid Radha Govinda Devji, what can we do? And hence, many of the deities in Vrindavan were hidden. It's a very, very famous and long story. And then, over a period of 28 years, most of those deities of the Goswamis are now where? In which city? Are in Jaipur. They were brought over to Jaipur because there was the king in Jaipur in particular later on, Jai Singh, who built the city of Jaipur, was a very, very exalted Vaishnava who came from the Kurma lineage, the lineage that comes from the Kurma incarnation of Krishna. And he set up the present day Radha Govinda Devji temple. And then there's also the original deities of Radha Vinod, Radha Damodar, and Radha Gopinath, all in Jaipur. And Radha Madan Mohan, that's in Karoli, on the way to Jaipur, in between Jaipur and Vrindavan. So these deities had to be secretly smuggled. Like there was the deity of Radha Vallabh. They were hidden in a cave. Radha Govinda Devji, they're like, if you have seen Radha Govinda Devji, they're over 6 feet tall. They were hidden in Surabhi Kund. And when Aurangzeb sent his soldiers the next day, and the principal temple he was after was Radha Govinda Devji. Most of the temples were destroyed except for the temple of Radha Raman, because Radha Raman, when the soldiers were passing by, it had a crescent, a half moon. They thought it was an Islamic minaret and they let it go. So Radha Raman was, as it is, the Radha Raman that we see today is the same Radha Raman, Gopal Bhatta Goswami's deity, as he was back then in Vrindavan. during the times of Aurangzeb. But then then there were some deities. Radha Gopinath they dug up the temple garden and hid Radha Gopinath there. So like that, different deities were hidden in different ways. And then Radha Govinda Dev Ji, I won't go into the full pastime, but even to get him out of Vrindavan, Radha Govinda Dev Ji, both Radharani, Govinda Dev Ji and the deity of Tulsi Devi, what they did was, this is devotees using everything in the service of the Lord. Shivram Goswami hatched up a plan. When the Islamic soldiers on one hand, they were destroying the temples and killing a lot of the Vaishnavas who stood between them. What they did to secretly smuggle the deity out was, they used to use torches. They still use those torches. They used to burn cow dung and use them as a torch. People who have gone to remote India, you will see. They used to, we are selling those cow dung cakes as diyas in the month of Damodar. So they used to use them as torches back then. And what he did was, he mixed little opium in the cow dung. So devotees using everything in Krishna's service. And they covered their faces and they took the torches around to where the guards were, and the guards fell to sleep. And then from Surabhi Kund, or Govinda Kund, from Govinda Kund they took the deities of Tulsi Maharani and Srimati Radharani and Govinda Dev Ji and put them on these large bullock carts, covering them with hay, and slowly smuggled them to Radha Kund. Like, if you have gone to Radha Kund today, even today it takes close to, depending on traffic, 20 to 40 minutes by car to go from Vrindavan to Radha Kund. Back then it took quite a few hours. And in Radha Kund used to be ruled by the Jat warriors. The Jat warriors were these fierce class of Kshatriyas who were also farmers and landlords. And they used to regularly have skirmishes with the Mughal army, and they were mostly disciples of Shivram Goswami. So initially the deities were hidden in Radha Kund, and then slowly over a period of, took 28 years. By road today it takes 6 hours or less to go from Vrindavan to Jaipur. Took 28 years to get the deities to Jaipur. But then in those 28 years, in the middle of the 28 years, Aurangzeb, who we're talking about, you can have all the opulence, you don't perform devotional service, you can be full of opulence and be miserable. Aurangzeb died, and his will also was found in the Vrindavan Research Institute. And so Aurangzeb, he tortured the Sikhs. If you look at the Sikh religion, if you read, there are 10 gurus in the Sikh religion. And many of those gurus, some of them were murdered, them and their children also, by Aurangzeb. So there's a lot of, if you read the Sikh history, it is full of, the Sikh religion also, a lot of the Sikh gurus sacrificed their lives to save the Hindus back then, in those days. They were actually a Kshatriya class. But then there were the Marathas also in India who were fighting with Aurangzeb and his army. There was Shivaji, who was a famous king in Maharashtra. Any of you here have heard of Shivaji? Yes, or Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, as he's known. He established the tradition of, he first set up a navy, the first king to set up a navy, and he established this tradition of guerrilla warfare, where they lure you to a middle of a forest, and then from different directions they attack you in small pockets and disappear. By the time you realize it, you've lost most of your soldiers. He was in fact even captured by Aurangzeb, and he managed to sneak out of Aurangzeb's palace and escape also. So his son Sambhaji, who was in the end, who also fought many victorious battles against Aurangzeb's army. Ultimately, he was killed by Aurangzeb in a very tortured way, because there were a few traitors in his own kingdom who were responsible for him losing the final battle. But then, in the last 20 years of his life, Aurangzeb had two aims: to find the deity of Radha Govinda Dev Ji and to eliminate the Marathas. And he was unsuccessful in both attempts. Radha Govinda Dev Ji went to Jaipur. How do we know that he is unsuccessful in both attempts? You can still have darshan of Radha Govinda Dev Ji in Jaipur, the original deities. And the original deities, they are very ancient deities. They are carved by Krishna's great grandson Vajranab, who is the grandson of Maharani Uttara, or grandson of Abhimanyu in the Mahabharata. And Uttara was the only one at that time who, after the whole Mahabharata pastime folded, who knew the facial features, the bodily features of Krishna. And she directed how the deity would be carved. It's a famous story on how they were found in Vrindavan. That's a story for another day. But that's how old those deities are, and they're still found today. So Aurangzeb couldn't eliminate them. In fact, there's a side story on, you might wonder, there was a 7-story build, the 7-story red sandstone temple of Radha Govinda Dev Ji. How come there are still 3 floors today? Because his order was to raise the whole temple. So it took them 2 months to destroy the top 4 floors, Aurangzeb's soldiers. And Aurangzeb was one day sitting in a balcony in Mathura, and from nowhere there was this swarm of bees. They entered his clothes and started stinging him one after the other. And he was howling in pain, and the soldiers had to take him inside. And the soldiers took him inside, and Aurangzeb was treated by his hakim or his physician. And he asked the physician, who was also a bit of a Sufi saint, that I am such a pious Muslim, how come this has happened to me? And whoever that Sufi was must have been an extremely brave person, because he actually told Aurangzeb, this is happening because of what you're doing to the temple of Radha Govinda Dev Ji, which is so dear to the Hindus. So that's why Aurangzeb, from that day, he stopped the further raising of the temple. Which is why you still have 3 floors in Vrindavan. If you go to Vrindavan, the replica deities are still there. The original deities are in Jaipur. So Aurangzeb lost on that front. Then in his will, he also curses Shivaji and the Marathas, saying towards the end of his life, he was an extremely rich king, the king of practically the whole of India, saying, I am left as a beggar today because I wasted my time, 20 years of my time trying to eliminate the Marathas, and I could never do that. Because they used to always attack him in these small pockets. Even after Sambhaji's death, there were other Maratha kings who continued that struggle that they have. They used to call it Swarajya. And he said, I could neither eliminate the Marathas, nor could I get rid of the deities of Radha Govinda Dev Ji, which was like the chief aim of his life. And he died miserably on both fronts, as is chronicled in his own will. But then, coming back to the original question, like what qualifications do you need to become a devotee of Krishna? Here you can be the king of India, you can be the king, you can be a very, very famous king, you can be a big influencer, but you can still be miserable. In fact, here we are living in Australia. Not long ago I used to work in the healthcare system in this country. Does anyone know what is the biggest malady of our time? Like 1 in every 3 Australians is suffering from it. No. What do you say? Very good. Mental health diseases. 1 in every 3 people in Australia, and there's like 28 million in Australia. 1 in every 3 million. 1 in every 3 persons suffers from a mental health affliction of some kind. And now there are like always, every day there are some newer and newer kinds of anxieties. Anxieties, panic attacks, the side variants of depression that people suffer from. There's mainstream depression, then there's, there is trolling related depression. Like trolling related depression was unheard of 10 years ago, where you put something on social media, you get trolled for it, or you get many negative comments, and hence a person gets depression, and in some cases even take their own life because of trolling. Like in schools now the Australian government's trying to pass a law, right? Under the age of 16, we'll shut down your access to social media. That's how widespread and bad it has become. There's trolling related, there is mobile related depression. Then people have depression if they put a particular post on Facebook or whatever and they don't get enough likes. So there's all these sub-variants of mental health diseases which people didn't know about before. Like in days gone by, people used to sit and listen to a Bhagavatam. There's Bhagavad Saptaha programs where the speaker would come for a week, and people for 1 week are just absorbed in listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now the classes, if you go on Radhanath Maharaj's Yatra, you have 2-3 hours lectures, right, that Maharaj gives. But then, okay, people's attention span in the Kali Yuga isn't that great, so you cut them to 1 hour classes. Then there are YouTube videos. People used to have the patience, right? You see a full YouTube video which could be, half an hour, 40 minutes. Now people don't have the patience to see a YouTube video, so there are shorts and reels. In that 1 minute, in under 2 minutes, under 1 minute, whatever message you want to convey, just convey. Because that's how your attention span is. What can one do? So everyone has to adapt, including the preacher. And in 1 to 2 minutes, in the corporate world as well, they call it the elevator pitch. You meet an executive, he'll say, no, I can't read your full business case. Give me the elevator pitch, which is like in under 30 seconds, you have to explain the whole business case or your whole document to them. I've had to do many elevator pitches in my life. So you have to do the elevator pitch. Because people don't have the attention span. B, their attention is pulled in different directions. So it is very hard to concentrate on one thing at any given point of time. So when you have this kind of a condition, and then there is depression because of information overload. That's the other term that's used. Where you get so much information from different sources, where it causes depression. Then there is community-related depression because people don't live in a community anymore. They live very isolated lives. So then it leads to loneliness and depression. And further on, it can lead to schizophrenia. And then there are so many other mental-related issues today. So before, in days gone by, it used to be the outbreak of the plague or cancer or something else that people would be worried about. Now you have to be worried about your own mind. So, in fact, there's a day in April, I think it's the 20th of April, and if any of you are working in a corporate job, they'll say there's the Are You Okay Day. I mean, before that it was very routine, right? If you're living in a community or you're living even in a joint family, the whole Are You Okay was done by your family itself. But now you have to have a separate Are You Okay Day, right? So like, and these are things which are actually, we are laughing about it, they're quite serious matter as well. Otherwise, 1 in every 3 people, you go to the street, 1 in every third person who's walking on the street has a mental health illness of some kind. Then there are these modern terms, they are called FOMO. What is FOMO? Yeah, what is fear? Fear of missing out. We should also have FOMO, by the way. But what's fear of missing out? Fear of missing out that I can't buy a house. I have to live with my parents. Fear of missing out that I can't have my dream job, dream car. Because society projects all these must-have things that you should have to have a definition of a good life. And if you don't have that, you've got FOMO. We should have fear of FOMO as well. Fear of missing out and going back to Godhead. Kushalena, very easily. Which can be easily achieved in this month of Kartik by doing any form of devotional service. But then you can, and then there is this, so we spoke about, the different opulences, and do you need to be opulent to take to Krishna's service? Rupa Goswami in the Padyavali very clearly says you don't. Then there are devotees if you look at the Krishna Leela pastimes or Gaura Leela pastimes, there's devotees who are extremely poor, but very, very, very pure devotees. Like, for example, in the Gaura Leela, there is the example of Kolavecha Sridhar. Anyone heard of Kolavecha Sridhar? How many of you have heard of Kolavecha Sridhar? Okay, Kolavecha Sridhar, for those who don't know, and for those who know, can help those who don't know. What was his occupation? Yeah, he was selling banana leaves and cups made of the banana pulp. A poor trader. And he was so poor that the hut in which he lived, the roof was full of holes. And then the cup in which he drank water, which became a very famous cup later on, an iron pot, also was leaking and had a few holes in it. But what was so famous about him was his relationship with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's a very, very unique kind of a relationship. This is the degree to which Krishna reciprocates with his devotees. So, in the Gana Gaudadesh Deepika, which is the encyclopedia of who's who in the spiritual world versus who they are in this material world, Kolavecha Sridhar is Kushumashva, who is one of the 12 principal Gopas or friends of Krishna. And he is very unique in his ability to always make Krishna laugh. So he comes in Gaura Leela as Kolavecha Sridhar in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And Kolavecha Sridhar, like I'm saying, I've described his poverty, which is also his glory, by the way. So he's so poor that he doesn't have landlord insurance and he doesn't have home and contents insurance. In In fact, the home, the roof is full of holes. He's living by having the other unique thing about so he was a banana trader, as Prabhu described, and 50% of his income he used to give to the worship of Ganga Devi in Mayapur. And with the other 50% is what he used to sustain himself. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to come every day when he was Nimai Pandit as a young boy and argue with him, okay, I need some banana leaves for my prayers, or I need some bananas. And he would never pay Kolavecha Sridhar the full price. And there used to be this, battle between them in the market where they're both pulling the banana pulp. And he's arguing, I'm such a poor person, why are you doing this to me? And this is the same person who makes Krishna laugh in Goloka Vrindavan. Here, Krishna is teasing him as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's saying, I know you're a very rich man, you're pretending that you're poor and you have millions stashed away somewhere, but you're not showing us. He says, no, I'm such a poor person. And then he tells to Kolavecha Sridhar, look, I know that half your income you give to worshipping Ganga Devi. I am the father of Ganga Devi. So technically you should be giving all your banana pulp to me for free. Still I'll pay half price for you. And he pays him half price every day. Somehow or the other, at the end of the day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manages to convince him to take half price. Half the original price of the cost of the banana pulp and disappear. So, that is their relationship. Then, and of course, and then when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu leaves, Kolavecha Sridhar will feel this great separate. He will be very angry with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Leela when they are doing the bargaining. But when Nimai Pandit or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu leaves, he feels this real sense of separation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Later on in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, also in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it is revealed that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at a certain point of time in Srivasangam, how many of you have gone to Mayapur? How many of you have gone to Srivasangam? Srivas Thakur's house, you should go, for those who haven't. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has the Mahaprakash Leela where one by one he's calling certain devotees and showing them a certain aspect of his form, which is his eternal relationship with them. For example, Murari Gupta, the physician, he shows him that you are actually Hanuman, I am Sri Ram, whom you are always worshipping. Then he asks for Kolavecha Sridhar to be called. And he tells, and actually before that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even as part of this teasing pastime with Kolavecha Sridhar, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would sometimes personally visit Kolavecha Sridhar's house, the hut full of holes on the roof. And he would tease him, he'll say, you're a Brahmana, you worship Lakshmi Devi, right? Very pertinent, it's Lakshmi Puja time, right? You're worshipping Lakshmi Devi, you're worshipping Narayan, and look at the house that you're living in. Whereas I see all the traders here in Bengal, they worship the bloodthirsty form of Kali Devi, and look at how rich they are. And look at how poor you are. So what are you really gaining by worshipping Lakshmi Narayan? Maybe you should also consider worshipping Kali Devi. And then Kolavecha Sridhar will answer that this is the greatest opulence I can have, that I'm worshipping Lakshmi Narayan. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calls Kolavecha Sridhar to Srivasangan, he tells Kolavecha Sridhar, you deserve to get the highest opulence in this world. You ask me for all the 8 mystic siddhis, you ask me for all the opulences of this world, I'll give it to you. What would you like to have? And Kolavecha Sridhar's answer is, you have changed. I would like to have that young boy who would come every day and bargain with me for my banana pulp and fight with me every day. I would like to have that every day in my life, and I would like to be a devotee of that person life after life after life. So this is Kolavecha Sridhar ki jai. That's his pastime. And then in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes also, when he goes and protests with the Chandkazi who wants to abolish the Sankirtan movement, and when he convinces him, no, this is who, and he reveals, he kind of reveals a part of his form to the Chandkazi, and the Chandkazi ultimately concedes to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, saying that the Sankirtan movement should continue. After finishing all of that, organizing a civil disobedience movement, the first of its kind, is not an easy task. After finishing all of that and being successful, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I'm very thirsty. So the devotees get him different pitchers of water, sugarcane juice, different fruit juices. He says, no, my thirst will only be quenched when I go to Kolavecha Sridhar's house. And he goes to Kolavecha Sridhar's house, and Kolavecha Sridhar saying, why you have come here? What do you want now? He says, your iron pot, I want to drink water from it. And there the two of them start fighting again over the iron pot. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes it, and when the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are putting water in the iron pot, they're putting water on the top and half of the water is leaking from the bottom. And in that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is drinking water from the same iron pot of Kolavecha Sridhar. So this is the same, the husband of the goddess of fortune. So everyone's going to be doing Lakshmi Puja. This is Narayan himself coming to your house and drinking water from your pot. And that is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing. And again, he tells Kolavecha Sridhar, really you worship Lakshmi Narayan, what is your opulence? And Kolavecha Sridhar again says, this is the greatest opulence. So in the Mahaprakash Leela, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, yes, you will be my confidential associate life after life after life. So all the 5 kinds of liberation we discussed, right, they are freely available to devotees like Kolavecha Sridhar. So, Kushalena, very easily, one can be very poor, you may not be very strong, you may not be very famous, you may not be very beautiful, you may perhaps not even like to take the cold water shower in the morning as a basic form of renunciation. That's okay. Krishna still is very, very eager to receive your love and your devotional service. That is the only thing that he is after. And if you somehow or the other connect with this Krishna consciousness movement, and more than that, in this month of Damodar or even otherwise, if you can get someone else connected with this Krishna consciousness movement, and you ensure that Krishna's mercy is given to them also, then Krishna's mercy will naturally be on you and your family. So that's all I had to say. Are there any comments or questions? No? Okay. So, we'll end with this verse, which is the last verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes the glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam again. Nimna ganam yatha ganga devanam achyutopi yatha vaishnavanam yatha shambhu purananam idam tatha. So the verse is Nimna ganam yatha ganga. Just as there is no river higher than Ganga Devi, Nimna ganam yatha ganga devanam achyutopi yatha. There is no devata or no god higher than Achyuta or Krishna, one who is infallible, who can never make a mistake. Vaishnavanam yatha shambhu. Just like there is no other Vaishnav greater than Shambhu. Who's Shambhu? Shivji or Mahadevji. And what was the last part of the verse? Nimna ganam yatha ganga devanam achyutopi yatha vaishnavanam yatha shambhu purananam idam tatha. Of all the Puranas and all the scriptures, Granthraj, or the king of all scriptures, the purest of all scriptures is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, because one last thing is, generally in the month of Damodar, and in general, there are 6 kinds of loving exchanges between devotees. You give gifts and you receive gifts. You reveal your mind and confidence to a devotee, and they can do the same thing with you. And what are the other 2 exchanges? You give prasadam and you take prasadam, priti lakshanam. I happen to be in Ujjain, which is, anyone been to Ujjain? Ujjain is the place where Krishna himself went to his Gurukul under Sandipani Muni. It's also famous for the temple of Mahakal or Lord Shiva, who is the Kshetrapal of Ujjain. Generally, wherever there are important pastime places of Krishna or Narayana or Vishnu, there will be a very famous Shiva temple, just like there are so many of them in Vrindavan. There's Gopeshwar Mahadev in Vrindavan, who is the Dham Rakshak, and in the different directions there are different temples of Lord Shiva. Same thing in Mayapur, there is Harihar Mahadev. And before you go to Jagannath Puri, one should take darshan of Lingaraj Mahadev in Bhuvaneshwar. So like that, I happen to be in Ujjain, Mahakaleshwar, the famous deity of Lord Shiva, and they have a very unique way of worshipping Lord Shiva. They do the abhishek with ashes, and these ashes have a slight fragrance of sandalwood in them, because the sandalwood has 2 qualities. What is the inherent quality of sandalwood? Cooling in smell. When we have the The Chandan Yatra festival also, right? The Lord is smeared with sandalwood. It's the summer month, and to cool Krishna, the sandalwood is put. So actually, Narasimhadev is described also, that Narasimhadev is described as having the qualities of sandalwood. He can be very hot and like fire to the demons, but very cooling to the devotees. Then one may ask, how is sandalwood hot? It is said if sandalwood is burnt in a yagya, the yogis and tapasvis who meditate in the Himalayas, and one can wonder how, you know how cold the Himalayas are, they smear sandalwood on their bodies to keep themselves warm. By smearing sandalwood, one gets the same heat as that from 100 quilts. And that is how they are able to perform their penances in the Himalayas. So I got the sandalwood smeared ash from Ujjain. If any of you wanted, I can give you some. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.